Hi everyone. So we're going to talk a little bit about percent change. So people can calculate a basic percentage, but people kind of have a hard time talking about changes in values as a percentage. You might not think it's that big of a deal, but we're going to talk about how we calculate those things as well as kind of how we can kind of say the same thing a couple different ways. So let's take a look. I needed a slide with some data, so I found a slide. One of my favorite websites related to data is if you go to a website called Reddit and look up a subreddit called Data is Beautiful. There is a bunch of really cool stuff with data, and I found this one, which is does price of Big Mac around the world. So if you want to find this, I always like to include my sources. This is actually a video that has some really cool infographics. I just stole a screen for the purpose of this example, but if you go to Google and you search Reddit, data is beautiful, the price of a Big Mac around the world, you will find a really cool infographic that goes through a bunch of the data about Big Macs. So we got prices of Big Macs in January 2022 around the world, and what we're going to look at is how can we compare the cost of a Big Mac in the U.S. compared to Brazil? So okay, basic idea. Okay, in the U.S., it is in January of 2021, it was $5.81, right? This was the U.S. price. And in Brazil, we will say it's 4.31, right? Cool. So we know it's less in Brazil, right? So, I mean, I guess one way we could say is how much less it is, right? We could just simply say it is, just take the difference between the two, $5.81 minus $4.31. It's $1.50 less, right? We could also say it's $1.50 more expensive in the US. Okay, so that's one way to think about it, is just for us to find the difference between the two and give it in terms of a value. But sometimes they're presented in terms of percentages. And you'll read all the time, the price of something went up 30% or down 20%. So we really want to dig into, how do we calculate a percent change? I'm going to actually show you, I'm going to show you kind of how we're going to do this. And the method that I'm going to use in class is a little different than what you might have seen in some videos if you look up how to calculate percent change. If you look at how to calculate percent change, you always can take the difference and divide by the original. But what I'm going to do here is to find the percent change in two values. What we're going to do is we're going to divide them. What we want to think about is it doesn't really work in this one, but we're going to compare one versus the other, okay? So let's say I go 5.81 and we're going to divide it by 4.31 and we're going to see what we get. So when I divide 5.81 divided by 4.31, it's just like we subtracted those values to compare them and we found the difference between them, right? But what do we get when we divide the values? So 5.81 divided by 4.31 is 1.34. Now, if we think about it, if it was $2 in the US and it was $2 in Brazil, and we divided that, 2 divided by 2 would give us 1. So that would be, they're the same price. They're 1 for 1. It is 100% of what you pay in the US is the same you pay in Brazil, right? So we think about 100% kind of as like a level mark. If you get 1 or 100%, the price is exactly the same in both places. But we can see here that the US is more expensive than Brazil. What percentage? Well, look right here. Think about this. How much over 100% are we? If we times that by 100 or move the decimal place, we're going to end up with 134%, right? So we could say, and I'm going to write this, I just think it's a little easier for me to type this, is the Big Macs in the US are 34% more expensive than in Brazil. Does that make sense? Because the change, if it was 1, it'd be the same. If it's 30% more, 34% more, it's 30%. It's above 1 by 34.34, so it's 34% more expensive, okay? Now, we might be able to go the other way with this. So if we take, let's say we did it this way, and you thought about it, and you were like, okay, let's divide the 4.31 by the 5.81. See what that gives us. 4.31 divided by 5.81. Oops. 8. I get 0.7. We're going to round this. I'm going to just round this to 0.74. All right. Now, you might look at this and be like, what is this? Again, think about the idea of 1 being exactly the same. So if we think about it, like I kind of think about it like a level, right? And if like 1 is the same, if we go above it, it's a % increase. If we go below it, it's a % decrease. So we are under 100%. So Brazil is cheaper. How much cheaper? Well, the easiest way to do this is turn it into percentage, or you can just minus it by 1 here. So if we do 74% and we minus 100, that's kind of what we did right here. So what we did is we did 100 minus 134 equals a 34% increase, right? Now we're going to do the same thing over here. 74 minus 100 gives us negative 26%. So what that tells us is the cost of a Big Mac in Brazil is 26% less than the US. It's interesting. These are not the same numbers. They look very different depending on which one we divide on the top or the bottom. But if we divide the larger one by the smaller one, we're going to get a % increase when we compare one to the other. When I do the smaller one divided by the larger one, we're going to say the cost of a Big Mac in Brazil is 20% less. Again, this is something that I don't think a lot of people realize or think about when we're comparing two values. We're going to do one last one. In 2000s, the Big Mac meal was $2.39. In 2010, it was $4.19. What was the % decrease? This is not true. This should be an increase. Sorry. Let me fix that because the price went up. How do we find that % increase? Again, we want to see how much it increased. So what we're going to do is we are going to put the larger number on top and the smaller number on the bottom, 2.39. And when I divide 4.19 divided by 2.39, I get about 1.75 when I round that. So that's about 175% of what it was before. But to find the % increase, we're going to subtract 100%, because 100 keeps it the same, right? If it was 239 and it stayed 239, when we divided those, we would get 100. Since it was 239, it increased to 419. It is an increase of about 75%. Again, if you look at this in the calculator and work it with me, you will see that prices. It's a little bit more. It's like 1.753138 and some decimals. So how do we say this? How do I write this? We would say the price of a Big Mac increased by about 75% from the 2000s to the 2010s. And I will tell you that that price has increased more as time has gone on. Okay, so this is a basic introduction to % increase and decrease. I hope this kind of helps you wrap your head around this. You will see a lot more with % increases and decreases in the homework. This might help you get started with it. We're going to hit this topic a lot more in the coming class periods, and hopefully you will continue to wrap your head around this. If you want to go online and look at the formula for how to compute % increase, decrease, you'll find something a little bit different than what I do here, but it's basically the same process, and I'll illustrate both of those techniques in class, and it'll be up to you to use the one that you choose. So thanks for tuning in.